My name is Paige Picorni. I'm with No Kid Hungry by Share Our Strength. And welcome to our almost last, it's crazy to think, of our summer webinar series, Schools Out, Foods In. Today, we'll be talking all about evaluating and incorporating feedback into your summer meals program. So again, thank you so much for joining. And before we get to the meat of it, a few housekeeping notes. Next slide. The webinar is going to be recorded and the slide deck shared to all attendees and registrants at the end of the presentation through email. We'll have time also at the end to answer any of your questions. So we did get a few pre-registration questions that we'll answer, but please do put any and all questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end of our presentation. Also, we encourage you to use the chat box function to interact with us, each other, the speakers. So please, if you'd like to put your name and where you're calling in from and your organization in the chat box, we'd love to say hello, see where everyone's coming in from. We have closed captioning available for this webinar, so please do use that function if you'd like. And now for today's agenda. After a little bit of welcome and introductions from me, we'll get right into it. So first off, Eugenie Sellier is from Feeding Alabama, and she will be talking all about site level feedback collection. Next, to talk about the community level feedback, we have Nicole Lau from the YMCA Greater Seattle in Washington, and also joining her, Angie Swank, and then Hannah Jordan as well from the United Way of King County, also in Washington. Next, to talk about the kids and family feedback, a very important piece is Constance Moore. She's from the YMCA of Memphis in the Mid-South in Tennessee. So huge welcome to everyone. I also want to do a quick shout out to Eugenie, Nicole, and Constance, who are out of school time meals champions, and I get to work with them pretty frequently, which I enjoy. And also thank you for Angie and Hannah to join us as well today. So thank you, speakers. They have a wealth of knowledge, so please do put those questions in the Q&A box to get a little more time with them. And then after all of this, I will round us out with some additional resources from No Kid Hungry and plug some of our upcoming webinars. If you are new to us, No Kid Hungry is a campaign of Share Our Strength. We are committed to ending childhood hunger in the United States and helping launch and improve programs that give kids the food they need to thrive. And I sit on our Center for Best Practices team, where we provide information, tools, resources designed to end childhood hunger. And that's our website there. I talk a lot about resources. It's basically my middle name these days. We put out a lot of them, a lot of great information. So please do check out that webpage. And last but not least, a huge thank you to all of the providers on the call. I know it's been a crazy time and leading into summer, happy summer. I know it's just going to get a little busier. So thank you so much for joining and taking time out of your day to spend with us. So to get us started to talk about site level feedback in your summer meals program, I'm going to pass it off to Eugenie.
All right, thank you, Paige. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's summer is off to a good start. So first, to kick it off, let's talk about site feedback. So a little bit about Feeding Alabama first. So we work to help align efforts of Alabama's 8 food banks to ensure food and funds are serving needs throughout our state. This includes work with the state agencies, elected officials, and fellow state national advocacy organizations. We also assist with policy work in the state legislature and program streamlining with state agencies. A good example of this is our SNAP working group. We bring all the needed parties to the table and have honest conversations about implementing these programs and the barriers. So it's something we hope to do with our federal child nutrition programs as well in the state by creating a child nutrition working group. So to look at our service area a little bit, we have our 8 food banks that we work with, and we are after school and summer feeding sponsor for almost all of them except for South Alabama. So we work in the north part of the state, the east, the west, the central part of the state as well. So we work with those food banks on the ground. We have coordinators that help manage the sites and operate these federal child nutrition programs. So a little bit about our program. As I mentioned, we serve as a summer feeding and after school sponsor. And this past school year was actually our first year as an after school sponsor. So it's a great time to get site feedback after a pilot year. But it's also great to get feedback when you're well seasoned in these programs. At the height of the pandemic, we served over 19,000 kids in 19 counties. So we have a pretty vast geographic area we're serving. We serve, in our lifetime, we've served over 1.1 million meals, and currently we're operating about 40 to 50 sites in our state. So enough about me, let's talk about engaging your sites and feedback. So why is it important to engage them? Well, first, we wanna make sure they feel valued. Sites are pretty much the first individuals on the ground that we have contact with, and they're the ones implementing these programs on the front line. So we wanna make sure they feel valued. You know, if there's issues with the program that's happening, deliveries, anything like that, and they're communicating those to us as sponsors, we're able to fix them. And it's not just them saying something's going wrong and nothing's happening. So we want to respect them and make them feel valued as partners, which can lead to building relationships with them and their staff, which can increase trust and also help retain sites, especially if there's target areas in our state we're trying to work in and it's really hard to get partners. It's definitely a way to open those lines of communication and build a stronger partnership. It'll also improve program experience, efficiency, and optimize the meal service. These programs are always changing, as we found out in the past 2 years, how much they can change. And there's always a continued learning going on. So there's sites implementing these programs different ways on the ground. They're practicing different models, and it's great to stay knowledgeable of what's going on. Maybe even highlight some of the best practices our sites are doing. We always have those wonderful partners that are just doing above and beyond work, and they have best practices we can glean from their experience. It's also great for collaborative planning and decision making. I don't think there's ever been a year we haven't incorporated their feedback into our decision making and planning. Generally, we like to get their feedback at the very end of the program so we can use it for the following year when we're getting our training ready, we're in our planning, we're doing outreach. And we like to use that even when decision making with deciding on new software, deciding on how we're planning our menu. So, there's a good bit of reasons why to have their feedback. So next we're going to look at their some different techniques and how we can engage them. So one of the first things you want to think about before deciding if you want to do surveys or in person is how much information do you want to learn? Are you just wanting very high level brief information, yes or no questions? Do you want them to just rate how they're feeling about different parts of the program, or do you want very in-depth detailed responses? So that'll determine if you should go the route of more surveying or if you want to do more in-person debriefing and open-ended conversations. So some topics to consider, I've listed a bunch here, but you know your programs and your sites very well. So these are just some suggestions, but at the end of the day, if there's specific aspects of your program that you want to survey your sites on, that's completely up to you. We like to do general overall program surveying, and then we also like to dig in a little bit more on different aspects of the program to really figure out where there's issues and where we can resolve them. So when it comes to surveying, you can do these a couple different ways. You can email a link out to your sites with resources such as Google Forms. I love Google Forms because whenever the data comes in, you can actually have it all put in a nice spreadsheet for you, a Google sheet, and then all the data is organized. So you can file it, save it, you can filter it, you can do lots of great stuff with it and organize it, and it's free. We also use JotForm. JotForm is a subscription service, so it does require a membership fee. And then there's also SurveyMonkey as well. It's free up to a certain point, and then you'll have to pay. But there are tons out there. Some of them are subscriptions, so just be aware that if you're looking for a free one, Google Forms is pretty easy, user-friendly, and I definitely like using it. If you have sites that may not be so tech savvy, they don't answer their emails, then it might be a good idea to do paper surveys. So these can go out with your monitors, especially this summer since we're all out and about visiting our sites. So you can send these out with your monitors while they're doing a monitor visit. They can ask them a brief 5-question survey, or you can send them out with interns. We use college interns a lot. So if you're, if you have a local university, junior college in your area, definitely lean on them and see if there's an internship. Maybe they can get credit by partnering with you in the summer program. Whenever you get to the more in-person feedback, this is a good opportunity to maybe look at grad programs. I will say a lot of graduate students generally love research and doing research projects. So if you're looking for someone or, a body to help you in that, definitely reach out to the local college university and see if they have any grad students that are looking to do some research and maybe get their feet wet. So for the in-person and virtual, we've done a variety. We've actually done all 3 of these. So debriefing meetings are great. They're at the end of summer. We've also done lunch and learns. Generally, we try to keep these an hour at the most. Some of them are only about 30 minutes. Of course, before the pandemic, we were doing a lot of these in person, and we would have a pretty strict agenda. We would have specific parts of the program we'd want to ask them about, and we wouldn't just talk. We would get them up and moving. We'd give them Post-its. They could stick stuff on the wall. We really tried to get them motivated to really be outspoken. One of the things that we did do is separate our sites by region. So if you have a group of rural sites you serve or a group of urban sites, or if there's different ways you want to separate them, maybe you have closed enroll sites versus open sites, this is a great opportunity to do that. So you can separate them that way. Whenever it comes to in-person, I would just keep in mind, if you have sites that are far away, they have to travel, gas prices are really expensive. What we would always try to do is find a local meeting room, whether that's in a library or a community center, where they can come and meet you so they don't have to drive a couple hours to your facility or, however far away they are to meet you. So we definitely tried to go to them with a lot of these in-person meetings. For virtual, that's also an option to keep people from traveling. I will say with virtual, I would just be very much on top of engagement and keeping this conversation going, because that it can be a little bit harder, right? Sometimes conversation doesn't come as natural when it's virtual. The last thing that's really in depth is the focus groups. So we did these a while ago, but we really focused on specific aspects of the program. We talked about meal delivery, we talked about paperwork, we talked about program regulation. So we kind of divided it up by subject matter. We also talked about marketing and outreach, because that was a big thing we really wanted to incorporate, and we wanted to know the best way to communicate with them, with their communities, what resources they would use, what they wouldn't use. And then we also talked about big picture stuff of where we're not helping them. What else can we do as a sponsor to really move them forward in this process? If you don't feel comfortable, or you feel that your sites aren't going to be honest with you in this conversation, then get a mediator or a facilitator. If you have funds available, definitely think about hiring a third-party contractor. These are really great, especially when you're looking at long-term changes, really in-depth major changes like strategic planning and really trying to change your program to better serve your sites. So we can go to the next slide now. One of the things that I like to do to really keep them a part of the process is feedback loops. So generally I initiate this with sharing their data with them every summer. You all have access to your claim data, so I really like to share with them how many meals they served, how many kids they served. It's something they're not always tracking. So I like to say, thank you so much. At the end of the summer, I send them a lovely thank you and tell them, this is how many kids we were able to serve. This is how many meals. If you have access to county, state data, that's also something great you can share with your sites too, to really show them the impact that they're making. With doing these surveys and doing, these in-person meetings and focus groups, share the results with them. You don't want them to feel like they're wasting their time. So please share the results with them. Even if you incorporate it in training the next year, say, hey, we really, we got some great information. We had some groups. And this is what we changed in our program because of it. To know that what they told you definitely caused changes in the program. I did want to mention that with surveying sites, you can also do that at trainings. We've done that before too, because they're already physically coming. So that was another way that we were able to kind of sneak it in and say, hey, while you're here, can you give us some feedback? But it really depends on when you want to get it. With incorporating that feedback, I've gone through some different ways of, changing your program, making it more efficient. If there's different softwares, if there's challenges that sites are having, I mean, whenever you're talking to the sites, or even when you're surveying them, you see these trends, right? You can see if all of them are having issues with the paperwork, then maybe there's something that's in your grasp that you can change, or maybe it's the meal ordering system we have. Maybe they can't go online and order their meals through your website, or maybe texting is not the best option to order meals, or going to the vendor or whatever. So maybe there's a new system we need to set up. So there's definitely ways to incorporate their feedback in the program. I think highlighting best practices is always a great option. Whenever you're talking to these sites, they're going to tell you some of the great work they're doing on the ground. It gives them the ability to network and talk to each other too. And then a bigger piece is advocacy. A lot of times with working in these federal programs, sites can have issues with some of the regulations. So if that's a trend, it's definitely an opportunity to say, hey, this is something that we can't really solve. As a sponsor, these are written down, these are made by Congress, these are made by the USDA, but this is how you can engage on on a political level to maybe advocate for these programs. And or these are websites you can visit, or this is who you can call the state agency. Just kidding, don't call anyone state agency, but this is who you can engage with to really get involved in advocacy. Finally, make sure to keep in mind your audience. We all work with a variety of sites, as I mentioned. If you want to separate them by the region they're in or city, if you want to, maybe you serve a lot of boys and girls clubs and it's great to get all them together at one time, or YMCAs or community centers. You can definitely separate them that way and then have different conversations with each. Think about your timing. So do you want to do this surveying and outreach in the middle of summer? Maybe July is better than June because it's a little bit slower. Maybe there's a 2-week break in August between your summer meals program and after school that might be ideal. And incorporate it annually. So make it a part of your annual schedule for your program. If every summer you want to do surveying, go ahead and create one and set a reminder on your calendar to update it every year, or apply for interns to come during the summer and help you. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to incorporate it and make it work, but those are definitely some things to keep in mind. I did want to mention, as organized as you can make it is the best. So I like to have an agenda. I like to put times on the agenda of how many minutes. I like to have handouts. I like to give them packets, everything and anything to keep it as organized, because you want to be respectful of their time. The one thing I didn't mention before I wrap up is, please give your sites as much as you can. Throughout this process, you're getting feedback from them. There's also other people you may want to get feedback from as well, but we always provided them with meals whenever we would have in-person meetings. We would give them goodies, we would give them gift cards, we'd give them enrichment kits for their sites. We really wanted to show them how important their voices were to us, and we didn't just want them to come and feel like we were just taking all this information from them and fulfilling it just because we wanted to. So, incentivize them, really show that you appreciate them, give them gifts, whatever you're able to do. I think it definitely goes a longer way. So that's all I got to say about sites. And now I'm going to pass it over to Nicole, and they're going to talk a little bit about the next level of feedback.
Thanks so much, Eugenie. I love your pictures and your slides. Those were amazing. Every time made me smile and laugh. And what a jam-packed amount of information that you gave us. So hi, everybody. I am Nicole Lau. I work with the YMCA of Greater Seattle. I'm the Senior Director for Youth, Family, and Community Programs. I'm super excited to be here with y'all today. I want to share a little bit about how we got kicked off with our community assessment project. So my colleagues who are here today will share a little bit more of the details. So I'll share a little bit of the overview. So where we started pre-pandemic, we were all chugging along doing our thing, and we were doing a lot of assessment work that was focused on youth and focused on informal community feedback for future planning and changes that needed to be made, similar to some items of what Eugenie was talking about. And through that, we really identified that we needed a more formal process and needed someone to focus on this really important area of work to help us get started. From there, we had some conversations with some of our great partners, including United Way of King County. And we identified that a capacity building AmeriCorps member would be a great fit for this new project to get us going, to really build up that capacity for us. And you get to hear from our AmeriCorps member today, Hannah, and she'll share a little bit more with you. So as we have built out this project, I think the two things that I just want to share that we have learned is flexibility and sustainability being the focus for us. So as we have looked at flexibility, we knew that we wanted to stay intentionally focused on community building and on continuous assessment and reflection throughout the project. But we also needed to be flexible to change the project as it went. And, lo and behold, we had to change the project as we were going. So mid-project, we had to shift as we realized that our process needed to be changed based on some of the feedback that we gathered in the beginning. So really having that flexibility is key when you're looking at doing a community assessment or any kind of assessment that where you're gathering the feedback and just knowing that in real time, you might have to make changes as you go. So that is really key for us. And then in addition is how we really keep this work moving after our AmeriCorps member leaves. So if y'all are familiar with the AmeriCorps project, that is usually a certain amount of time, a 1 year or so, where they provide their service term with you. And so we were really intentional about how do we build out a system with our capacity building AmeriCorps, Hannah, to be able to make this a sustainable piece of our work and put it in our operations. So with that, we have built a companion document that has been a great tool to document kind of everything along the way for us. So that way it's something that we can hand over for our individual programs, what's applicable for those staff, those volunteers, so they're able to implement whatever we need to use the bigger picture of community assessment work at their level. And this also allows us to have an overview of what's needed and then refine and edit the process as we go. So those are two of the biggest items that I wanted to share with y'all today, but I'm excited that I have some colleagues on the call as well that will share a little bit of the details. So I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague, Angie, who will share an overview of some more of our community assessment project.
Thanks, Nicole. Hi, everyone. I'm Angie Swank. I'm the program support specialist for a hunger team at the YMCA of Greater Seattle. And I'm excited to share with you some of the details about our community assessment project. So really at the forefront of all of this, we had our guiding pillars of racial equity, consent and conversations, and reciprocity. So I'm going to start off just by telling you a little bit about that. So racial equity, it's important to do your homework on the community, research the history of the area, learn about how past and current institutional structures influence present power differences, racialized oppressions and disparities in the community. With consent and conversations, often researchers and community evaluators approach a community with good intentions, but fail to recognize they're still outsiders. By asking survey questions, they are asking people to share intimate details of their lives and relive their trauma. Reciprocity, with asking for so much time and emotional labor from our community, it's important to compensate folks and to keep in mind we should ask the community what they think is reciprocal, not just to make decisions based on our assumptions. There's also a huge focus on building relationships with the community in order to equalize the power between the community and ourselves, the evaluators. Hannah's going to go into a little bit more details on how we did that in just a minute. But specifically for this project, for our surveys, we created a multi-step evaluation process that asked for a preliminary review of our survey questions by community partners in order to be transparent and to get consent for our conversations. Specifically, we did this with the Y Branch staff, the executive director, our Hunger team, and the Social Impact Center. Our survey consisted of 27 questions that were created from 6 areas of focus. We conducted our survey in a combination between paper forms and an online Google form. Like Eugenie said, it's great. The Google Forms are fantastic for organizing the data for us. So any paper forms that we collected, we inputted ourselves into the Google form. So we had everything compiled all together. We had about a 2.5-week survey window where we asked folks to participate in the survey at our hunger programs, at the YMCA branch, and at a branch community event. For our community conversations, we planned for 2 roundtable conversations with folks from the community who showed interest to participate via our survey. Again, we created our questions for these events based on the survey focus areas, and we specifically created objectives from those areas for the community conversations. Something important, again, is we wanted to acknowledge that the community is the expert in their experience. So our last question for our community conversations is, what questions should we have asked you today but didn't? We asked this knowing that we might have made assumptions of what the most important information is to gather, and we may have missed the mark. So we wanted to make sure we included the community voice in that way as well. In providing compensation, we wanted to help immediately alleviate some of the stress folks may be experiencing around food access through hot meals at the events, along with other food resources. With our partners who helped us in this process, reviewing questions and supporting us throughout the way, we were making sure that we're going to share our finalized data with them and also our toolkit for them to use for the future as well. Other important items that we planned for were to create safe and comfortable space for our participants, planning ground rules, and also having an anonymous data collection plan for the community conversations. What we've learned along the way is this is maybe not a one-size-fits-all option. And one of the things we're planning on doing is looking to add a question into our survey of how people would be interested in continuing the conversation outside of those kind of multiple choice questions in the survey. So giving options of the community conversation, but also some one-on-one conversations, maybe an option of a more in-depth survey or something else we haven't thought of yet. We are still working on analyzing our data, but we plan to use this data collected to determine how we will provide more relevant support for the community based on their specific needs. And now I'd like to pass it to Hannah to share about her role and experience in the project as an AmeriCorps member.
Thank you, Angie. Hi, everybody. My name is Hannah Jordan, and I am the AmeriCorps member working alongside Angie and Nicole for this project. So this AmeriCorps term has been a really unique opportunity for myself as a recent college graduate in public health to play an active role in health evaluation and nutrition intervention. So having grown up myself, understanding the realities of food insecurity, it's been extremely rewarding to be involved in a project like this. Not only has the service term provided me with opportunities to lead and to grow within my career, but it's also been an opportunity to give back in a way that resonates with my own experiences in navigating barriers to health. So to elaborate a little more on our process of building relationships with the community, before we began intentionally interacting with the community, we created a foundational understanding of community history, circumstance, and resources by building an asset map and what we call the community description. So these resources served as a strategy to gain insight on community experience and needs before engaging and decrease our risk of being more harmful than helpful. This is based on the understanding that we cannot achieve equitable outcomes if the relationship and processes through which we're accomplishing this work are not equitable in and of themselves. So as you can see in our slide here, this is our community asset map in the corner. The black outline represents city limits of Kent, Washington. All purple dots highlight community food access resources, so nonprofits, churches, other programs that serve hot meals outside of the YMCA. And then the yellow dots are specifically YMCA hunger programs. So this asset map has served us well in identifying where to begin our assessment. And as mentioned, an important focus that we've upheld during this project has been maintaining consensuality and reciprocity within these vulnerable conversations of food access. As a capacity builder, I've had the flexibility to direct a substantial portion of my service hours towards building relationships with community members through a presence at our Y Hunger program. This is not our place to define a community that is not ours. Thus, actively engaging and building relationships through these programs has allowed us to cultivate a greater understanding of the communities that we're serving. Our goal throughout this whole project has been to equalize our positionality to empower the community members to feel safe sharing their stories about food insecurity with us. And lastly, to talk about the benefit of this approach, the relationship building has given us a lens to better understand the context behind the data that we're receiving through our surveys. As we all know, barriers preventing access to resources vary within and across communities in many ways. And this process has allowed us and will allow us to develop programs that will adequately and equitably meet the needs of those seeking support. And we've only been doing this for a few months, and we understand that this is an ongoing opportunity. The community is constantly evolving and the work is never done. We can acknowledge that spending 3 months in a community can help to build relationships, but we know that the more time that we do this, the more the community will trust us and the greater impact that we can make in this role.
Thanks so much, Hannah. I appreciate Angie and Hanny hopping on today. I'm going to turn it over to Constance, who's going to share a bit more about the youth voice in this work.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Nicole. Again, I'm Constance Moore, the compliance officer here at YMCA of Memphis and the Mid-South, and I'll be speaking to you about the kids' feedback during this summer program. So we all know that our target audience with summer meals are the children that we feed. And whether we feed 1-year-olds or 15-year-olds, we have to listen to them because they give us the honest, raw truth. Some of you may wonder, how do we actually hear the kids that we feed? One of the ways to listen to children is to enlist the help of your site supervisors or your volunteers at the sites. Ask the site supervisor what the children say when they receive their meals. Are the children excited and yell, "Oh boy, cheese sticks"? My 8-year-old does that. Or do they moan and say, "Not another wild butter sandwich"? Get your site supervisors or the volunteers to record random kid expressions. This doesn't have to be labor intensive. The volunteer could simply write down a few of the kids' statement, and they can put these statements on the back of the daily meal count form. We all have to keep those. And once the form is turned in to you, then the sponsor can gauge the thought of what the kids felt on the meals that were served on that day. Another way that we can engage the kids this summer is through a kid-friendly survey. Yes, take a look at the screen. You will see that this simple card has 4 different faces to help a child explain what they thought of the meal that day. If the meal was great, we expect a huge smile. If it was okay, good, just a simple smile. Most kids will not give you a true expression. They will be blank face as the one that says okay, and some may say that they just did not like it. But this card, if you give it out to the children at the time that the meal is served to them, also give them a crayon or a marker or something to make their mark on the paper, you can make it exciting for them. The card should be picked up at the end of the meal service. So make sure that your site supervisor knows that once they pass them out, pick them back up as well. Prior to giving them out, make sure that you have the site name listed, what meal was being served, whether it was breakfast, lunch, snack, or supper, and the date. That way, when these cards come back to you, you can refer back to your menu that you served on that day and understand what the kids thought of the items then. But just ask the kids to just mark their expression. So when I got this task of judging a kid's feedback, I thought of a few key areas. So what are they eating, their reaction to it, and the statements or facial expressions they make and tell their parents. One of the things we need to know is, what do kids want to eat? I know that as adults, we have a different palate than children, but we have to be practical when dealing with kids. And from my experience as a state monitor and now as a compliance officer and also as a mother, I know that children love to dip items. And when I say dip, they like to hold things in their hands and dip. So on the screen, you'll notice a plate of carrots. Many sites give out little bags of carrot sticks during the summer. It is great, it's cold, it's quick, and they can hold it in their hands. But if you give them something to dip it in, they will eat it more often. So think about including just a little packet of ranch. You can also think of more items that are handheld, because it's summertime and kids are free of school. Most of them free of school, some of them have summer school, and out enjoying the sun. They're coming to us for food. So let's think of food that they can easily eat by hand and also can keep them cool. I know we have to be concerned with the age of the children that we're serving, but if we are serving children that are school age, think of freezing grapes. A grape is a fruit, and imagine how tasty it is if it's frozen prior to being eaten. It can come as just a little cool treat for the summer. It's cold and sweet, as opposed to a popsicle. It's not credible. So another thing, engaging their reaction. Again, I recall that I said get the site supervisors and the volunteers to write down expressions. Ask those site personnel to watch for the kids' reactions to any new menu item that's been introduced. Does the child seem to enjoy it, or is he disappointed in the meal? When I say you've introduced a new menu item, I will use us here at the Y as an example. We have introduced hummus. Most adults I know here won't try it, but children are loving it because, again, it's a dippable item. So when the food is introduced, just have someone there to see the reaction of the children. And also encourage your site personnel to not discourage the children in eating. Don't have them make a face. You just say, it's good, and go ahead, let the kids eat. This is an extra step that site personnel will have to be trained on, but it will help you greatly in your summer meal planning. Because as the sponsor, you will be able to learn how the products you choose are being accepted. And we understand that children are likely to return to our summer meal sites when the food we provide is something they enjoy. So while I understand there are supply chain issues, we are all dealing with it. Please be encouraged to provide meals that encourage the children to eat, because that's the goal of summer. The last thing we need to focus on, listen to the parents. We have wide summer programming, and many of our open community sites have programming. So parents are more often at our sites during the summer. So we need to listen to what parents are telling us about the food that we're serving. Does your program have a line that the parents can phone or email to send in their thoughts? If not, then you should invest in a formal line of communication. And by that, I mean have a direct line to you as the sponsor so that the parents can contact you when there's a question about the meals being served. If you don't want them to contact you via phone, create a email address, a generic one that you as the sponsor will be able to look at each day. But please, by all means, get your parents' feedback, because parents ask their children how their day was and what they ate. And children are likely going to be more honest with their parents than with us. So some parents may want to express their child's concerns with you. Be sure they have a way that they can reach you. And please, above all else, when a parent does reach out to you, please respond. It only takes a 1-minute phone call or a 30-second email. But please respond back to them, because once they know that they have been heard, they will encourage their child to continue eating at your site as well. So we understand that the objective of summer is to feed the children, but how do we keep them coming? So I said we call our summer programming, because each of our sites is encouraged to reach out to our neighbors to have the kids doing something during the summer. So if you look at the screen, in our summer meals program, we are attempting to have organized and planned programming. Programming will give a reason for the children to visit your sites during meal service. And while even if you cannot offer programming every day, being able to offer it at a set time each week would encourage repeat visits. So my examples of summer programming here is we would have the local police to come in, ask them to send out an officer with a patrol car and allow the children to inspect the vehicle. Ask the officer to remain during meal service to engage the kids in safety and answer any questions they may have. You can do the same with the fire department, your local ambulance, or a city bus. I promise if you reach out to any of these organizations, they have trained personnel who are required to give volunteer hours that will literally come to your site for free. Another form of summer programming would be sports. Bring along a ball or a hula hoop or a jump rope. That way, when it's time for the children to eat, they can also engage in a physical activity. Make the activity fun. Tell them whoever can hula hoop the fastest within 10 seconds, come back tomorrow for a prize or a treat. Anything like this to make food or mealtime fun. That's my goal for the summer here at the Y, and I encourage you all to get your kids' feedback, even as simple as hey, how did you like lunch today? Will go a lot further when we as sponsors know that the meals we serve are actually being consumed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Constance. What a fantastic presentation. We do have plenty of time for Q&A. I know I have a bunch of questions, but I'll let you all ask your questions first. So please do put any questions you have in the Q&A box, and also feel free to put your own plans or ideas for gathering feedback this summer in the chat. We'd love to hear that. So the first question, say you do a big survey or some form of the feedback method, how do you manage and filter through all of that feedback?
One of the things I suggest is, especially if you're depending on, so if you're doing surveys, I would say take time to go through them. With any kind of feedback, you may get a lot of responses. And I know, especially with the debriefing sessions or meetings, we would always schedule those at least a week to 2 weeks apart to make sure we had enough time to go through the information they gave us. If we had follow-ups, we'd ask them. For surveying, that's why I keep highlighting Google Forms, is because it organizes it all in a nice, pretty Excel sheet for you, and you can filter the results. You can go through them. And I also suggest, having a staff person designated to that. Of course, I don't think it's a full-time thing, but if you have an intern or, a staff person who's looking to engage the clients in a certain way, I think it's a great opportunity for them to do that and give them a couple weeks to go through the information and then present on it. I think that would definitely be a good way to develop staff.
Anyone else have thoughts on that question?
One of the other things that I like with Google Forms is that it also creates charts for you. So even the first time I look at the data, I just go through and look at all the percentages of things. So if there's like a yes, no, unsure question, you can see kind of where all the answers fall and kind of get like a visual picture. I'm a visual learner, so I like that a lot. That's one of my first things that I do. And it is just taking time to read through everything, sorting kind of based on consensuses, looking for any outliers. I know recently looking through our surveys that we have now, as there's a few things that there's a couple of outliers. So I'm going to go back and look at those specific surveys and see what else might be some barriers for those folks. So, or some other things we might have to figure out. So I think it really is just looking for those items like that. And I also think that kind of in making changes to your programs and improvements, something that I think is really easy is looking for some low hanging fruit, easy ways to make changes that you can share with the community that based on their feedback of, we love hummus, maybe more hummus comes, right? So I think that it's just looking for those easy wins is helpful also to show the community that you are hearing their voice and implementing it into your program.
I love that. And I promise we're not being paid by Google. We just really like Google Forms, and I agree. Anyone else before I move on?
Yeah, the only thing I would just add is one other component. We talked about doing paper and online. And so once you do get that data back, really looking at how you can bring it together if you did multiple ways of gathering that data. So how can you incorporate that feedback that you received from the surveys? As Angie had mentioned in ours, we inputted that information into that Google form, so that way it could just be in the Excel document. But if that isn't something that you can do, because I know that takes time and we are all short on it right now, just thinking about how you gather that, is there a way to just highlight even on the form real quick so you all know exactly where to look at, what you're looking at, stuff like that. So just get organized as you're going into your deeper dive of the data to help really make it efficient and see where you're able to improve, or that low hanging fruit, or whatever it might be.
Awesome. Constance, I have a question for you. You mentioned parent feedback, and sometimes you get a phone call or email. What happens when it's an angry one? How do you approach those situations?
Well, one of my top strengths is positivity. So for me, I approach it in a positive light. But for others, I would encourage the same. I have dealt with irate parents. And the first thing is to try to lower your tone while they're yelling at you and let them know that you hear their problem. But you have to honestly hear what they're saying. Now, I have had it here at the Y. One of our products is called Hot Off the Grill grilled cheese sandwich. It's not hot when it arrives to you in the summertime. We get those sandwiches in frozen. And so by the time we take it out the freezer into the cooler and then to delivery, it's not hot. And I can use this example because it just came in this week. So I did explain to the parent, although that is the product labeling, I was very apologetic. I asked, did the child appreciate the meal? Well, yeah, he ate it, but it wasn't hot. Again, I'm apologetic, but let's focus on the task at hand. The task was, did the child eat the meal? And in this case, the child did. I just told the parent going forward, we would change how we label it on our menu. Now, there are times when we will get a parent that will complain and not be so understanding. In that instance, we do not want to continue to engage them. Let them know we hear their concerns, and if they will give us a contact information, a cell phone number we can call back, or text, or an email. And I will immediately email within 24 hours. I give them time to cool off. This is me personally. I email them and tell them we've addressed it, so it won't happen again.
Great tips. Yeah, gotta incorporate all feedback, the positive, negative. That's great. Nicole, Angie, and Hannah, you talked about a fantastic project that is just getting off the ground. And I know this is probably a little premature, but I'd love to hear a little bit about what's next in your plans.
Yeah. So our amazing AmeriCorps member, Hannah, like I said before in my presentation, we've created a companion guide. And so really what's next for Angie and I to do as Hannah ends her service term is operationalize this. So how does this go into our policies and procedures for each of our unique programs that we offer in our food access umbrella, and being able to really identify how we do it as a team and how does each program do this. So it'll be really looking at what we've learned with Hannah and this project, and then building that into our operational capacity within our staff team. Not adding, but really looking at how we create efficiencies to just keep doing this within what we're already doing. I know, everyone is a little bit short-staffed and we've got a lot going on. Our communities need us. So we know that this work is needed and extremely important. And so we just want to make sure that we keep it community focused and that we ensure that we train and provide our staff with those tools to be able to implement this effectively. Hannah and Angie, feel free to add anything that I missed.
Great, thank you. So this question is for anyone and everyone. Do you offer any non-English or translated methods, feedback methods, your surveys or focus groups or whatever method you're doing? Do you offer any of those?
Yeah, Angie, I don't know if you want to take this one because we had a lot of conversations about this.
Yeah, yes and no. Shout out to Google Forms again. There is a way to actually translate it into other languages. Like you can change settings. It doesn't work well on a cell phone or like a tablet, but on a computer it does. So not all languages are covered, but there's quite a few. So if a link has been emailed to someone can easily do that on their computer. For us, our paper surveys were all in English. And I will say it was definitely a barrier for us in our programs. We had some folks start the survey and were able to answer the first handful of kind of demographic type questions. And then they just gave it back and were like, I can't do this. Or I know there was at least a couple of people who sat down and really took their time, or they used their phone and translated question by question because they really wanted to give our feedback, which I think is amazing. But I think that's also a hardship we're putting on the community, and that's not our ideal. So I think yes and no, we are, and I think we definitely have a lot of room to improve still.
If I can add just one thing, what was kind of helpful for me, I spent a lot of time sitting in the branch, trying to get people to come take the survey, or we were at Healthy Kids there or the other places at the branch talking about this, and being able to, I speak Spanish, so being able to translate at least what we're doing in Spanish for people and translate questions, if that was a thing for them, that definitely was useful. Also, being able to sit down with some people while they take the survey and have them ask me, what does this mean? What is this word? And be able to just kind of reword it for them served really well for getting people to take the survey and have a better understanding of what they're responding to.
Yeah, I know language access is something that, even with our not necessarily feedback forms, but our resources, and not just language access, but making sure that, if anything's written, it's written at an appropriate level, especially when you're gathering feedback from children. So I love those picture feedback forms, Constance, that you are referring to as well. We're getting close to time, but I did want to leave a little bit of space. If anyone has any last words or last thing to share, kind of words of encouragement, if you will, to folks this summer and who are trying to do some more feedback evaluation efforts.
I'll jump in there, Paige. I'm looking in the chat, and it's one in there that says, how do we go about setting tables at the park? This is what I've told sponsors here in Tennessee. Children don't need to eat at tables. Children don't need to sit in chairs. Summer food is all about meeting the children where they are. And if it is a park or a big tree, as I've been described to go towards, lay out something for them to sit on. You can bring a throw blanket or a tarp of something, but make it where they can just sit down and they can eat it there. A resource table. Paige, can you help me with that? Is that resources from the group? here today?
Yeah, I think, thank you for catching that also, Constance, in the chat. A resource I would like to provide resources or collect feedback with giveaways. Probably check with the Parks and Recreation Department. Or you can always do my favorite method is ask for forgiveness if they do get us upset. I know in my former life, I've done very similar things in parks, just, popping up a folding table. You don't need much. So if it were me, I would ask for forgiveness, not permission, but checking with your Parks and Rec department is always a good call too. But Constance made a great point about meeting kids where they are. So thank you for that. Anyone else have some last words?
I can say that I'm about to start doing surveying now to some of our sites. So start early and give them as long as you can. I feel like we're spokespeople from Google, but I recently learned how to do, and I feel like an idiot because I've been using Google forever, the scheduled send for emails. So I will go ahead and do scheduled send reminders to sites for reminding them to do the surveys for like over the entire month up until the deadline. So I will go ahead and set that all up at the same time and get that sent out to them to, remind them. And then I'll also have our coordinators and monitors remind them too. So yes, go Google.
If Google wants to sponsor us, we're okay with that, by the way. Google out there. Awesome. Okay, we are running out of, Nicole, Hannah, Angie, just real quick, do you have anything else to share?
No, we just really appreciate being here today, and hopefully y'all gained a little bit of information from our community assessment, but we're going to be starting implementing it for our summer programs too, really being able to, make sure that we're incorporating whatever community feedback that we got from last year into this year and moving forward. So
awesome. Good luck. Good luck to everyone on the call, and thank you so much. This fantastic panel, such great information. I have a few bits of slides and resources to share, so please stay on the line. Don't leave us yet. So first off, we have a great new resource about feeding a crowd, tips for congregate meal service. We know that many areas across the country are going back to congregate meal service this summer. Next, if you needed a refresher on kind of traditional versus what was allowed during the pandemic, we have this great side-by-side resource. A little bit wonky, but good. And that if you are more of a ear learner, you can listen to a lot of that information on this webinar. And it also has an update from USDA. So a great webinar there to check out. More resources on staffing, navigating supply chain disruptions. We know those are big topics these days. And speaking of webinars, I can't believe we're almost to our last one of summer. So next month we'll be Thinking 365, transitioning your summer meals program to an after school meals program through CACFP at Risk. So please do tune in. We're still picking the date, so stay tuned on what the date and time will be, but it will be in July. And thank you again to all of our presenters. Please do stay in touch with us. Next slide. That is how you can hear about all of our new resources, webinars, grant opportunities. That's our best practices newsletter. So bestpractices.nokidhungry.org/subscribe. And I mentioned at the start, that is our website with all of the resources, all of the webinars, and lots of great information for you. That is my contact information. If you have any questions for myself or the presenters, please never hesitate to reach out. I love talking about all things summer, all things after school. So please do. And I think that is it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you learned a little something and can take away a bit of information to gather feedback from your community, your sites, your students this summer. So have a great summer. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.